one cry when Jaws die, but when the monkey die, people gonna cry. Intellectuals gonna love Kong. Even film buffs who love the first Kong gonna love ours. Why? Because I know give them crap. That was the exact quote that producer Dino De Laurentiis gave Time magazine in 1976 after he had decided to take an ill-advised step in remaking one of the greatest and most influential monster movies of all time. No small task indeed. That's a lot of pressure to take on and huge, literally, shoes to fill. And did Laurentiis achieve what he'd set out to do? Well, I mean, he made a Kong movie. Wouldn't really include the King part, though. And I wouldn't really even call this movie a remake as much as I'd call it a reimagining. Rather than taking place in the 30s, this is a modern setting, taking place in the then current era of the 70s. There's no Carl Denham, no Ann Darrow, no filmmaker looking to find his big break in Hollywood. Instead, we get an oil tycoon played by Charles Grodin, who basically discovers that Skull Island is housing enough oil to make even BP's balls moist. Meanwhile, you have a young Jeff Bridges, who was 27 at the time this movie came out, but somehow looks just as old as he does in The Big Lebowski, playing a monkey biologist who sneaks aboard the oil vessel so he can hitch a ride to set his eyes on Kong. Oh shit, guys, I found him! He wasn't in the desert at all, and apparently he's been eating pretty well. Along the way, they stumble upon a lone woman floating in a raft at sea who calls herself Dwan, because it sounds cool to her.
I'm Dwan. D-W-A-N, Dwan. That's my name. You know, like Dawn, except I switched 2 letters, you know, to make it more memorable.
She was about to film a porno called Deep Throat, but somehow that didn't work out for her. And if you think I'm joking, I'm not.
I swear to God, you see, Harry was showing this film that I refused to watch. And that's why I was up on deck by myself when the yacht exploded. Did you ever meet anyone before whose life was saved by Deep Throat?
This is basically our version of Ann Darrow, played by Jessica Lange, who had never actually been in a movie prior to King Kong. And honestly, her acting isn't bad. Not really. I mean, Dwan is a fucking ditzy idiot whose only purpose is to A, keep our attention, because this movie moves at a goddamn snail's pace, and B, well, Kong needs his white girls.
You know, you really shouldn't go ashore tonight. It's not a good night for Aries like you.
How did you know I was an Aries?
By the shape of your ears.
I would have tossed her off the goddamn boat right then and there. By the time they finally get to the island, you're just ripping your nut hairs out one by one, waiting for something to happen. It takes an hour for Kong to even show up, and yeah, you can argue that the 2005 remake takes even longer, but that movie was interesting. It had interesting writing, characters, and a setting to make it more palatable. This is just boring. Now, the movie's called King Kong. We're here for King Kong, so obviously he's the main star, or at least he should be. Rather than stop motion, this Kong is achieved by a combination of a dude in a suit, who just so happens to be Rick Baker, probably one of the greatest names in the practical effects landscape, and animatronics. Oh, and big dirty ass Kong robot hands that barely functioned and almost injured Lang's stunt double when they just decided to snap at the wrist for no reason while it was holding her 10 feet off the ground. 'Cause technology, I guess. Oh, and Kong's voice is done by Peter Cullen, voice of Optimus Prime. God, what a weird movie this is. Now, I'll say this, of all the times Kong has been portrayed by a dude in a suit, this is easily the best one. Thanks to Rick Baker's animatronics in the suit, it's actually pretty expressive most of the time. The problem is that the expressions are creepy as a motherfuck, especially when he does this smile, like, God, stop! There's like a scene where Kong gives Dwan a shower under a waterfall and then, like, literally blow dries her off, and it's weirdly sexual, but in a really creepy way. Like, I'm sure in Dino's mind this was beautiful or something, but all I wanted to do was scrub my flesh clean with a wire brush during this entire scene. But Dino's magnum opus, and what almost all of the movie's budget went to, was a full-scale 40-foot Kong robot that was supposed to be the most sophisticated animatronic ever seen by man. Controlled by 4,500 feet of wires, 3,100 feet of hydraulic hose, and built using a 3.5-ton aluminum frame, this monstrosity cost nearly $2 million alone to create, which in the 70s was a lot of money. This thing was touted by Dino as fully animatronic, capable of all the movement they needed, including walking. And it was in one single scene in the entire movie, and all it did was stand there. As for the rest of Skull Island, it has absolutely none of the whimsical feeling that the 30s movie had. There's nothing about this place that feels genuinely mysterious or captivating, and it just looks like some cliff on a random beach. I feel like if they turned the camera too far in one direction, we'd see a resort or some shit. And aside from Kong, the only other creature in the entire movie is a really shitty looking giant snake that Kong fights. Sure, we get the jaw rip, and it's gnarly, but like, no T-Rex? No dinosaurs? nothing. And I mean, they recreate the movie's iconic log sequence, but it just looks so cheap. Like, this movie was made 40 years after the original King Kong. Technology and special effects have advanced astronomically since then. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever that the 1933 movie, as primitive as it is, should look more convincing than a movie made in 1976. Once they bring Kong to New York, that's when the movie gets exciting, I guess. Gotta love how when they bring Kong out, he's covered in like a giant gasoline pump, because get it? Oil is the devil. Guys, it's really subtle. And I mean, his rampage in the city is pretty lackluster, and all he really trashes is the train from the original. But if it gets me away from having to listen to more of their terribly written love dialogue, I'll chew the hair off Kong's ass, I don't care, just give me something. But even the goddamn rampage sequence is cut short because Dwan wants to stop at a bar and get a drink. Are you kidding me? You're being stalked through the city by a giant horny ape and you want to stop in at the pub? Stupid is what they were going for? Man, do I feel it. Rather than the Empire State Building, this movie's finale takes place on the World Trade Center towers. Why? I honestly have no idea. It's not like the Empire State Building wasn't available. He gets gunned down the same, but I guess this time Dino wanted to just make it as bloody as possible. Like, god damn, man, it's everywhere. Tarantino would be stroking a foot somewhere real hard to this moment. I'm probably gonna get flack for this, it's fine. I don't care for this movie at all. Maybe it's just because I hold the original and the 2005 remake in such high regard that this one just kind of feels like a black sheep to me. The history of the movie's creation is more interesting than the actual movie itself, and that's not a good sign. Now, I'm in no way saying that this movie is awful. It's not terrible. In the world of giant ape movies, there's far worse movies out there. And I know a lot of people have a nostalgic connection to this particular version, and that's fine if you do. But what it really comes down to is that this remake, reimagining, whatever you want to call it, it just feels totally unnecessary.